My parents grew up in a small southeast Texas town, and like most there, they grew up in poverty. But by the time us kids came along, we were doing okay. When they were young, it was a different story. Many of the neighbors were really in poverty, so much so that my parents ended up getting with the local church and delivering canned goods and homemade food to various couples. Take, for instance, this one family that lived at the end of the block. They lived in a chicken coop, and they were really having a hard time, much more so than most of us. It didn't end well for them. When their house was destroyed, they didn't have enough money to repair it, and so they ended up living in a chicken coop coated with tinfoil to try to make walls, because that was all they could do. It was a sad time. But even sadder was the fact that if you looked at this particular family, they looked worse than their surroundings. They were largely obese, very puffy and very out of shape. They looked like a lot of people today look in Walmart and at bus stations and around vending machines. They didn't take care of themselves. And it was completely obvious to all who were looking. That particular family, the father ended up dying of cancer, and the kids and the wife ended up remarrying someone with a little bit of means. So it kind of ended well, but not really. But the fact of the matter is, most people who are obese end up in a situation where their life cycle is self-destructive. Now, you would think that someone who's poor would be very skinny and emaciated looking. But history has shown us over and over that that is not the case. The ones who are obese are those who are in poverty. They are the ones who have very little. And there's a few reasons we're going to look at for why this is. But the fact is that up until Nero, there was not even one obese emperor. Most of the obesity comes in the lower class. We're going to go over 4 poverty habits. Look for these in yourself and see if you spot any. Number 1, you eat what is available and convenient instead of what is good and preferred. And I'm going to do a quote which you can see about how it's very easy to succumb to all sorts of malnourishment under the guise of you think you need to. And most people are not discerning. But the quote is from Ori Hofmeckler in his book, The Warrior Diet, 2nd edition, page 37. While hunters work hard to get their food, scavengers don't. They pick up leftovers. While hunters have a sense of priority and know exactly what they need, scavengers have no clear sense of priority. While hunters will make a selection, choosing their food, scavengers eat whatever is available. While hunters eat only when hungry, scavengers eat all the time. While hunters eat warm, fresh, live food, the scavenger often eats cold, dead food. While hunters like to eat when it's safe so they can relax, scavengers eat, quote, on the go. Interesting quote. And even more interesting is how it describes so many people today. The problem with the lower class is that they begin to think like sheepish consumers instead of investors. A smart eater knows how to invest in their body. They have a plan, they have a method, and ideally they have good foods. Number 2, you eat things to avoid them going to waste. Very scary point this is. Many places, in the South particularly, down here in Texas, it's like this everywhere. The tea is very sweet, and that is just as proportionate to the amount of drugs done in these small towns. I've traveled north a while, and I found some of the same things where in places like Yellowknife, Canada, and different parts of Alaska, because of the harsh temps, people stay indoors and do drugs. And the alcohol abuse, all of these things are high. Well, it's the same thing with obesity. The desire for a quick fix is always there, and the carb foods are the easiest to get a hold of. And then there's this guilt thing that a lot of our old Catholic grannies raised us with, and that is that it's a sin to let food go to waste. Well, if you believe that, then you're going to end up eating all sorts of things and getting very big. Never eat out of the desire to not see something go to waste. You only need so much, and when it is not your time to eat, it is not your time. If you cannot invest in yourself, then you cannot make progress. And here's what the studies show, over the long term with regard to poverty habits. That these people stop making strategies to get themselves out of trouble. And the part of the brain that's involved is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. And that's what creates learned helplessness. When they've tried a number of times and have been defeated in their efforts to strategize and make plans, they eventually give up. And so they settle for eating whatever is available, just like that family at the beginning with their chicken coop. They didn't strategize, they didn't make plans, they didn't know what to do. They had to eat at the behest of others, anything that was brought to them. And as a result, after a number of years of failure, they ended up succumbing. But there's also another side to this. Remember the Y2K scare in 2000? The year 2000 rolled around, everybody started to get toilet paper and bottled water and do all sorts of crazy things. Because there's this survivalist element involved in people that is often very self-destructive. People think that they're under attack. And that's another aspect of the poverty mindset. They feel like they have to retaliate against something, that they have to be on guard against something, that there is no hope. And just as we mentioned the learned helplessness, it continues in an individual's fears. Number 3, you hide food. This is a big trait of modern food addicts. And if I go home to my parents, I can still sometimes find some food stuffed in a drawer somewhere. Why is that done? Because that's the way it used to be. If you are hiding food, or you know someone who is, that is a very bad sign, because that is a defense mechanism. Number 4, you buy and cook in bulk with little or no justification. Again, getting back to the poverty mindset. Try not to cook more than 2 days in advance. Or, ideally, try not to shop more than 2 days in advance. You'll find that your food tastes better and is better when you cook in smaller portions, if possible. But ask yourself this in regard to point number 3 and this point. Why does a dog bury its bone? It does so out of the same defense mechanism that people get into this scarcity mindset. They're trying to survive. They believe they are under attack and they have to retaliate. I knew an old woman named Maybelle Hawkins. She was born in 1898 and the year was 1998. She was 100 years old and the talk of our small community. We ended up having to clean out her house. She had a 1956 Ford, some kind of old car that she bought new. Well, she needed care because she ended up parking in the middle of intersections and walking to supermarkets, nearly getting hit. When we went to clean out her house, we found everything in there. We found all sorts of craziness. And the reason for it was, that was what they did back then. They collected everything. There was not even any room for this lady to move hardly. She spent her days sitting in a rocking chair making those little chicken napkin holders that the old church ladies do. And she could barely see, so the place was horribly unclean. Why did that happen? Why did they keep things like teeth? Like teeth they pulled out of their mouths and put it in a piece of foil and laid it on a hutch. Why did they do that? Because extreme poverty messes with your head. And the people who have it the most difficult, like going back to the 1940s, Homer and Virgil Langley, they were the 2 biggest hoarders in the first part of the 20th century. They made the news for what all these storage wars and all these reality shows of today, they made the news because of this same tendency. When a person overeats, a person hoards. It's the same instinct. When a person starts to make all these bunkers and get involved in crazy survivalist, doomsday prepping stuff, it's the same thing. It is survivalism, but it is the same tendency, the same scarcity mindset. You're not in poverty today. Even if you are on the low side of income and you are having a hard time paying rent, We've all played that game, I think, where we have to choose which bill we're going to pay on time this month. We've been broke. You're still not in hardcore poverty the way it used to be. You need to set clear priorities and make what you put into your body a better choice. There is an easy way to save money doing what I advocate on this channel and in my other videos. But the main thing to remember is the programming that evolution has installed in you as far as being hungry and feeling desperate. You don't have to run that program because it's not a good program anymore. It does not fit this day and age. Don't allow poverty habits to dictate your life in any way.